Subscribe if you hate Karens, and comment where you're watching this video from. The hum of the Bugatti Chiron was a symphony of engineering excellence, a low, guttural purr that vibrated through my very bones. Midnight black, it absorbed the light, like a black hole, only to spit it back out in sharp, aggressive angles. This wasn't just a car, it was a statement, a culmination of years of coding marathons, sleepless nights fueled by caffeine, and the burning desire to build something extraordinary. Selling my software company had been bittersweet, but the freedom it afforded me, the ability to indulge in a lifelong dream, made the pangs of nostalgia fade with each passing mile. I'd ordered the Chiron months ago, custom specifying everything, from the interior stitching to the carbon fiber trim. The anticipation had been agonizing, a slow burn that threatened to consume me. Finally, yesterday, the call came. "Your chariot awaits, sir." The dealership experience was a blur of champagne, handshakes, and earnest congratulations. I practically floated out of the showroom, the keys feeling impossibly heavy in my hand, a tangible representation of all that I had achieved. Driving it home was an experience, a sensory overload of power and precision. The Chiron moved with an almost unnatural grace, defying its massive size and weight. It cornered like it was glued to the asphalt. The acceleration was mind-bending, and the sheer presence of the car commanded respect and awe from everyone who saw it. I parked it in my driveway, a monument to ambition realized. The scent of leather and new car permeated the air, a constant reminder of the journey that had led me to this moment. I spent the rest of the evening simply admiring it, running my hands over its smooth lines, lost in the details. I hadn't even peeled off the dealership sticker clinging stubbornly to the passenger window. It was a constant reminder that I was still in the honeymoon phase. Then, she arrived. Like a storm cloud gathering on the horizon, she marched up my driveway, her face contorted in a mask of disapproval. Karen. The very name conjured images of entitled complaints and unwarranted demands. The stereotype personified. Yoga pants, blonde highlights attempting to defy gravity, and an aura of self-importance that could curdle milk. She didn't bother with a greeting, just a direct accusatory point at my Bugatti. "That's rather flashy. For this neighborhood, isn't it?" she declared, her voice dripping with condescension. The audacity was breathtaking. "Flashing is exactly the point. I wanted flashy. If I didn't want flashy, I would have bought a Toyota Camry." "Whose car is this?" she continued, her gaze sweeping over me with undisguised suspicion. "Mine," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I had a feeling this was just the beginning. Her reaction was exactly as I anticipated. Disbelief, quickly followed by thinly veiled contempt. She blinked, her eyes narrowing as if trying to reconcile the image of me with the reality of the car. "What do you do?" she demanded, bypassing any semblance of polite conversation. It was an interrogation, a veiled attempt to justify her preconceived notions. The air crackled with unspoken judgments. Her question was a challenge, a prompt for me to explain myself and, in her eyes, inevitably fail to meet her standards. I suppressed a sigh. I knew where this was going. "I mind my business," I responded with a smile, deliberately vague and hoping to shut down the line of questioning. It was a playful retort, a way to deflect her prying without being overtly confrontational. But Karen wasn't easily deterred. My answer seemed to only fuel her curiosity and confirm her suspicions that I was somehow unworthy of owning such a vehicle. The offer felt like a slap in the face, an insult masquerading as generosity. $20,000, cash, for the car. She stated her offer like it was some kingly negotiation. Her attempt to control the situation fueled me. My son deserves it more. He just graduated from community college. I almost choked on my own spit. Did she really think that I was going to sell my dream car for $20,000 to some college graduate? I laughed softly, a polite chuckle that barely concealed my incredulity. "Thank you, but I am not interested." My tone was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. The offer was not only insulting but also wildly unrealistic. A Bugatti Chiron cost millions. $20,000 wouldn't even cover the cost of the tires. That's when the switch flipped. The pleasant facade crumbled, replaced by a hard, accusatory glare. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with unspoken animosity. Then, the storm broke. Her voice escalated, rising in pitch and volume until it bordered on a shriek. "You obviously stole it," she accused, her words laced with venom. "There's no way someone like you could afford a Bugatti." The blatant racism stung, confirming my worst suspicions. It was a knee-jerk reaction, a prejudiced assumption based solely on my appearance. Her words were a stark reminder of the insidious presence of prejudice, the way it could warp perceptions and fuel baseless accusations. Her words became harsher and hate-filled. She accused me of various crimes that I had never committed. She pulled out her phone, her hand trembling with indignation. "I'm going to record this," she announced, her voice dripping with malice. "Everyone needs to see what kind of person you really are." She began filming, narrating a fabricated story about how I had hacked into a dealership and forged documents to obtain the car. Her lies were outrageous, completely detached from reality, but she delivered them with such conviction that I could almost believe them myself. She painted me as a criminal mastermind, a fraudster who had somehow managed to pull off the heist of the century. The absurdity of the situation was almost comical, if it wasn't so infuriating. Her phone became a weapon, a tool for spreading misinformation and inciting outrage, and then, the ultimate Karen move. She dialed 911. "I need to report a suspicious person," she declared to the operator, her voice trembling with feigned concern. "There's a man with a possibly stolen luxury vehicle parked in my driveway." Yes. She claimed it was hers. The sheer audacity of the lie was staggering, and I could not stop laughing. Minutes later, the flashing lights of police cars illuminated the street. 2 squad cars pulled up, their arrival disrupting the quiet suburban idyll. The officers approached cautiously, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. I remained calm, knowing that I had nothing to hide. I knew the drill. This wasn't my first encounter with unwarranted suspicion, and I knew that the best course of action was to cooperate fully and remain composed. I calmly presented my driver's license, the car registration, and the all-important title, which still bore the dealership's temporary tag. The officers examined the documents with scrutiny, their expressions unreadable. I watched them run my information through their system, the seconds stretching into an eternity. Finally, after what felt like an age, they handed back the documents, with a sheepish look. "Everything appears to be in order, sir," one of the officers said, his voice laced with embarrassment. He turned to Karen, who was standing nearby, her arms crossed and her face a mask of righteous indignation. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the vehicle." But Karen wasn't about to back down. Her sense of entitlement ran deep, and she refused to accept that her accusations were unfounded. She wasn't interested in facts or evidence. She was determined to prove that she was right, regardless of the consequences. Her ego wouldn't allow her to admit that she was wrong. She walked directly towards the Bugatti, her eyes fixed on the door handle. The absurdity of the situation was bordering on surreal. Was she actually trying to claim ownership of the car? She started yanking on the handle, her face contorted in a grimace of frustration. "It's mine now!" she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. "I claimed it." As if owning a Bugatti was as simple as sticking a flag in it and declaring it yours. The image of a spoiled child claiming a toy was the first thing that came to mind. And that's when it happened. In her frantic attempt to force her way into the car, she managed to open the passenger door. The gesture looked triumphant until the alarm sounded. Not just any alarm. This was no ordinary car alarm. This was a custom-programmed security system. I had spared no expense in protecting my investment and ensuring that any unauthorized access would be met with swift and decisive action. The alarm blared, a piercing, high-pitched shriek that echoed through the neighborhood. But that was just the beginning. The alarm was linked to my smart home security system, which immediately sprang into action. Within seconds, my phone buzzed with a live alert. The system had detected unauthorized entry into the Bugatti and was initiating its pre-programmed response. The true alarm was about to begin. Loudspeakers, strategically hidden throughout my yard, activated, blasting a pre-recorded message at maximum volume. "Step away from the vehicle," the voice boomed. "You are being recorded. Law enforcement has been notified." The message repeated itself, creating a cacophony of sound that was impossible to ignore. If she had any thought to make a good name for herself, this would certainly wash it away. Karen screamed, startled by the sudden onslaught of noise. She stumbled backward, her eyes wide with panic. The car was no longer just an inanimate object. It was actively resisting her, challenging her authority. It felt as though the car spoke directly to her. The neighbors came pouring out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. Some of them just watched in amazement, and most of them were recording the entire scene on their phones, eager to capture the unfolding drama. I could hear whispers and murmurs as they tried to make sense of what was happening. The neighborhood was now one big movie set. I just prayed that I wasn't the villain. As Karen stood there, paralyzed by fear and humiliation, one of the officers received a notification on his mobile data terminal. He spoke with the other officer and they started walking towards Karen. Turns out Karen wasn't supposed to be in the neighborhood at all. The officer started shouting to the other officer about her past crimes. He spoke loudly so the neighbors could understand too. Her ex-husband owned the house she was living in, and she had been legally evicted 3 weeks ago, but she refused to leave. She had been squatting ever since, using mail fraud to fake residency and maintain the illusion that she still belonged there. I laughed under my breath. She really was a character. The moment the officer said her full name, she snapped, realizing that her lies had been exposed. Panic flared in her eyes, and she made a desperate attempt to escape. She bolted, running away from the officers and straight towards my front yard. She did not see what was in front of her. The cameras that were recording caught what happened. Next, she tripped and fell directly into my koi pond. Splashing around like a delirious catfish, she flailed and screamed, water dripping from her hair and face. "You set a trap!" she shrieked, her voice hoarse with outrage. "This is entrapment!" I have never seen karma be more instant than this. I almost felt bad for her, but I remembered that she was racist. By now, the entire neighborhood was in an uproar. People were filming from their porches, egging her on. I heard someone playing the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme on their phone. The scene was pure chaos, a bizarre mix of slapstick comedy and social commentary. The officers quickly apprehended her, pulling her dripping and sputtering from the koi pond. She wasn't arrested because of the car, but because of her resisting arrest and the violation of the eviction order. My Bugatti? Still spotless, and maybe a little bit more infamous. Except now, it has a holographic sticker on the side mirror that says, "If you can read this, you're too close."